man speaking in the city square, trying to tell somebody that he cares. Can you blame the voice of youth for asking what is true? Yeah, the ones that you're calling wild are gonna be the leaders in a little while. When will the lonely voice of youth cry, what is true? This our world's waking to a newborn babe, and I solemnly swear it'll be their way. You better help that voice of youth find what is true. And the lonely voice of youth cries, what is true?
Bang! Welcome in, everybody. Wow, what a week it has been. But we're here now in Pirate Land, even though no one understands pirates, unfortunately. And we have our Sampel. It's right here. Hopefully you have your Sampel. We have our Muppet Cup, because you should consider. Have you considered? You really should consider. If you don't have a Muppet Cup, you should buy one. Muppet Cups help you consider. And we've got some beautiful mint tea. Yar. I'm going to call this the Yar cup from now on. Thanks to Ixnan's encouragement. And then we've got our Good Earth tea in our captain's mug. Smells delicious. Both are wicked hot, as you would say if you were in New England. And I'm not in New England, but I might as well be. No, it's cold up there. It's not cold here. 56 degrees today. Not too bad. Yeah, there's a lot going on. I finally, today, somehow, magically, got one of my animation friends to draw me some slides. So we have another animation coming. I mean, there's slides, but it's close enough. Trust me, it'll be great. He saw what I was trying to do immediately. It was really funny. I described it to him. He's like, oh, and I'm like, yep. He's like, oh, okay. And then he drew up the slides. I recorded it earlier today. It was great. I can't wait to put that out. There's other stuff coming. It's all coming together. Let's grab our favorite book here on the live stream anyway. And let's see what we can glean for an aphorism for today. Oh, this is a section called The Sacred and the Profane. I'll just read the first one. You cannot express the holy in terms made for the profane, but you can discuss the profane in terms made for the holy. Taleb delivers again. I love it. I absolutely love it. Asymmetry right there. Asymmetry is really important. I got to do a video on asymmetry. There's so much to do there. It's just nuts. And there's been so much going on this week. In fact, in the better news, I know I did a video recently about the truth, and I mentioned the boomerang of truth, and through the extreme generosity of Sally Joe, we now have and will be putting for sale on the store truth boomerangs in 2 colors, blue or green. And you will be able to buy a truth boomerang. These arrived a mere few hours ago, so I do not have them up on the store yet, but I will. And I will probably have a video of the truth boomeranging, because we're going to see a lot of that. We're going to see a lot of that. I watched part of the Piers Morgan Nick Fuentes interview, and it's so funny what people aren't seeing and what they aren't getting. And I'm tempted to do a breakdown of it and I only watched like 15 minutes, and then I was cooked. I left a very carefully worded comment on that video, just to let Piers know that he's the worst person that could ever exist. Uh, uh, just horrible, 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 and like people noticed. Like people noticed that you're being dishonest. You don't think you're being dishonest, but actually, so yeah, yeah. And the thing is, what this sort of thing highlights, which is related to the topic, which I will swing back around to. Um, you're living in a world where a lack of knowledge because of this age of gnosis thing gives you innocence and prevents punishment. It prevents consequence. It prevents all of these things, which is the same as preventing correction or change. The dumbest will reign in this world. They will be in charge because they are educated. See, science corrupted, broken, and lying to us. The practitioners projecting their psychological insecurities, just like all the so called philosophers after Plato and Aristotle, onto the world. And it's clear now that that's what's happening. It's not just because we're living in a corrupt and fallen world. It's because we value this knowledge. And it's because if you don't have the valuable thing, you're a lesser creature and need to be treated differently. And that's what's broken the useful equality that we used to have, where we were equal in opportunity and punishment. And the thing is, I watched this Fuentes and Piers Morgan thing. It's like 2 hours, and I watched like 15 minutes or 10 minutes or something. I forget. It wasn't very long. And I saw this thing, which I mentioned before, about these guys discussing is forging a 20-pound note, wrong, as if that wasn't an obvious foregone conclusion somehow. And then I heard Carl Benjamin making some really important points about this conversation. But they're missing the core, right? Who is the bad guy? Who is wrong? The person attacking reputation and family, especially indirectly, like these indirect attack things. This is like a very strong sign of evil, right? I'm not saying all indirect attacks are evil, but it's a very strong sign, especially when that's your tactic coming out of the gate, right? I mean, stand for something, right? Making insinuations without making accusations, which could be backed by evidence. Insinuations can't be backed by evidence. And it's not that hard to see who the bad guy is. It's Piers Morgan, guys. Like, this isn't hard. He's actually the bad guy, right? And if you notice carefully what's happening, the educated, wealthy man in the position of, we'll say, influence is using what can only be described as sneaky smear tactics. Carl Benjamin called them dirty, dirty smear merchants. I have a sweatshirt and a t-shirt that says that, by the way, because I bought it from him back in the day. These are not the good guys, but they don't seem to know that. It's not hard to figure out that someone who has a best friend who is of another race cannot therefore be a racist, all things aside. What Piers is caught up in is Piers is a man of words. He's a man of propositions. That's how he makes his money. That's how he gets his ego boosted. That's how he has what he has in terms of hierarchical status in the world. So he takes the words, not even Nick Fuentes' words, and insinuates because people, most people, anyway, according to him, are a product of their environment. Um, and therefore, your father said this, and therefore, and therefore, and therefore, all other pieces of actual evidence, because when you're in the insinuation game, there's no evidence required. Insinuation is just implying a relationship which may or may not exist. It's like, okay, but also the sun rose. Does that make me a racist? Because that's another fact of the world that is true. And it really is to that level now. And the thing is, I think, you know, I had a discussion with another person from the UK recently. I think people are really confused about things like natural law and mediation. Piers Morgan is a mediator of a discussion. Not doing a very good job, though, making lots of mistakes. And I think we have a better sense of mediation in the United States. The UK clearly has lost the plot. The place has fallen completely. And quite honestly, it took me completely by surprise. Our natural law is not mediated the way it is in Europe. In Europe, the natural law is mediated through the government. The government grants you the laws as stated. In the US, people mediate the natural law to constrain the government. That may seem to others as though the Americans are arrogant because they're seizing a power that presumably isn't theirs and using it to constrain what the Europeans would consider the rightful power holders. Okay. But also, US soldiers run towards gunfire, not away, unlike everyone else. Those two things may be connected. I will let you ponder it. But how's that tie back to education? I know I've mentioned this before. If you've watched me before, you probably have heard it. Education is a psyop word. It is a psychological operation. That doesn't necessarily mean it's negative or bad, but also, if you listen to what people are describing, what people are talking about when they use this word education, what they're talking about is formation. And about now, pretty much everybody, I think, I hope, has noticed the maturity crisis, which is a lack of maturity all around, right? And that includes all kinds of unexpected people in unexpected places. A lot of people will talk about things like narrative control, and people are doing this with narrative, and what's going on and things like that. But actually, they don't. They're not on this at all. But you should talk to an actual author if you want to know something about narrative control and narrative things. And so, to that end, I shall bring you an actual author's clip from her channel on YouTube, which is amazing, actually. So, at some point, it's only a minute long, it's a regular YouTube clip. At some point, you should watch that clip because it's fascinating, because everyone's noticing it. Right? Critical Drinker is noticing it in the movies. This woman on Second Story is noticing it in writing. That whole video is good, actually. I don't actually like all of her stuff. I think some of her stuff is completely bonkers. But when she gets stuff right, she's very right about it. And I haven't by any means watched even most of her stuff, we'll say, but I've seen quite a bit of her stuff, and it's pretty interesting. So we're coalescing around the terminology, the problems, right? And there's tons of evidence. And the Piers Morgan interview shows this, that We are failing to form our children, or have been failing to form our children, probably for, unfortunately, quite some time now. And therefore, these people that seem to be adults or should be adults in their 30s, in some cases, 40s in some cases, right? They're remaining children longer. And the fact that there is young adult literature, that is a category in the bookstore, like, why would you ever even want that to be a category in a bookstore? Do you understand what you're doing? Clearly not. And there's all this fan fiction, which, as I mentioned, is what that clip is from, a thing of fan fiction. Fan fiction, by the way, is pretending to be an author when you probably can't write a sentence well. Because a lot of those people, and this is something she didn't harp on, which I was really upset about actually, they can't write at all. It's not that they're writing bad stories, it's that they're barely able to have good grammar. These people are horrible. And they want to tell a story that's their own personal egoic story that caters to their personal fantasy. That's all that fan fiction has become. Now, whether or not all fan fiction is that way is irrelevant. Her point stands. And it's a good point. And it's an important point. And all these other people talking about narrative control and blah, 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 they're not authors. They have no idea what they're talking about. None. None. They're fantasizing themselves about how everything works. And so what happens is you look at what type of humor is popular. You look at public spats and how they play out. You look at the way people reason about the world, all that binary thinking that's out there, all the emotional outbursts that you see. You can look at how people are suddenly unable to learn complicated things. They have an inability to deal with other people. And you need to know how to deal with difficult people because the world is full of people and many of them are difficult in various ways. There's a lack of cooperation out there. People are not able to see other perspectives. Everybody knows this. We're talking about it constantly. What do you think these are signs of? These are all signs of the maturity crisis, which is due to a lack of formation. This is a generational issue, but it is not about any particular generation because something like that has to unfold over 2 or 3, maybe more generations. I'm just going to tell you. I don't have time to go through the evidence of this or how this works or unpack it for you in this live stream. So I won't do that, at least not in the monologue. And there's more evidence. You may have heard Ben Shapiro say 2 things can be true at once. That was a popular and important mantra that he had, right? It is the rejection of binary thinking. And it's more evidence that people are unable to think well. They can't hold more than 2 things in their head at the same time. And therefore, they are easily fooled. They're easily hornswoggled. They're easily tricked into buying snake oil. It's easy to manipulate binary thinkers. Very easy. You put 2 things in front of them, they think that's the world. They think that's perfectly normal. Everything is full. It's all they have room in their heads for. This is where people talk about nuance. The only reason to talk about nuance is because you can't use the word detail like a normal person would. That's about it. Do you mean level of detail? Yeah, most people can't track details. That's true. That is a true statement. That also means they're stupid. Now, they may not be stupid in a way that is important or that anybody should care about, but they're still just technically stupid. That's not a bad thing. That's most people. You got to remember, IQ is a relative measure based on the total population. Right? And that means IQ can move down while the IQ numbers don't change. Right. Big problem. There are ways around that. The people that talk about IQ are all dumb. They can't do statistics. You can read Taleb. He posts about this all the time. He's written about it in his books. IQ is a wonderful measure of stupidity, but so are lots of things. Like if you can't remember to ask, would you like fries with that? It's a good measure of stupidity right there. You need an IQ test for that. Terrible measure on the high end. Once you get above the median, the middle, that 100, usually there's other tests indexed other ways. Terrible. It stops correlating with anything at all. There's no correlation between IQ and any other thing that anyone's found. Oops. And the thing is, let's suppose you do have a high IQ and that IQ is useful. What good is intelligence if you have a short attention span? All of these things are symptoms of a lack of maturity. And you could ask rightly, Mark, you're not a doctor or a medicalologist or anything, but do you know who else has a short attention span? A 3-year-old. Children. So it's fair to see the signs that we see and conclude that there's a maturity crisis. These people are not mature people. They're acting like 3-year-olds because they're still mentally 3 years old in many ways. Maybe not always. Maybe they dress sharp. But you know what? I've seen 3-year-olds dress up in suits and ties too. I want to tell you about that. The way outrage works in the population, not just on the internet. I mean, yeah, the internet makes everything worse because it's a gigantic amplifier of everything, right? Technology just speeds everything up. That's a function of immaturity. This outrage culture doesn't work in a mature culture. You can't know that. No, I can. I was there. It didn't used to work. People did it all the time. When I was growing up, there were 2 types of newspapers. There were the reputable newspapers, and there were the rags, they called them, the rags. The rags were all outraged. They were all aliens land on Earth and, this actor and a gerbil and, no, really, and things like that all the time. And they were gossip rags, and they were in the supermarket, but they weren't next to the newspapers, but they looked like a news. You couldn't tell them apart really, except for the headlines, of course, and they were flashier. We don't have that anymore. It's all flattened, blending into one. My flat world video, by the way, is like 314 views somehow. I mean, that's wonderful. I hope it gets more, but kind of weird. I didn't see that coming. And the thing is, like, these are not the result of the internet. Though, don't get me wrong, I'm still open to, shutting down the internet if need be. I'm on board with that. We'll lose the live stream and my YouTube channel, but maybe we'll gain the world. I don't know. If that's the trade-off, I'm all in. Just to let you know. And I'm sorry, but comic books were not a good idea. I'm just saying. Hindsight's 2020 though, so no fault. No fault. Video games? Anyone? I have videos on that. Very destructive. Manga? And sure, you can argue this is a small number of people, maybe, but they're highly influential. And there's a big influence that they're exerting, drawing everything lower. I mean that technically. It's a technical designation that everything's being drawn lower by the interaction with these things, however small the number it may be. Remember how many people it took to bring down the Twin Towers? How many people did it take to build it? This is the asymmetry. It's very important. And the first issue we encounter when using the term education is that pretty much everywhere, there are 3 types of education. First, education is divided by age, right? The education that persons under 18 receive, at least in the US, is drastically different from the education that higher education provides. That's college. And then the lower system that isn't higher education, what a weird, we don't call it lower education. They used to call it basic education. And then there's higher education. Basic and weird. The lower system is divided into grammar school and then either high school or vocational school. How interesting. But when people talk about education, they just say, oh, the education system in the US sucks. Well, except for the higher education, which is the far superior system to the sum total of all other higher education on the planet. For real. I'm not making that up. You can use any metrics you want. You're going to come to the same conclusion. That's why all the foreigners are here getting an education. It's also part of, but not, we'll say not the main part of, the inflation of the cost of education is that they can charge outrageous prices to the wealthy around the world to come get the education and bring it back to their country as though it's somehow valuable. I disagree, by the way, fundamentally, because education system that we have, college or otherwise, uh, for the most part, there are there are notable exceptions to this, but for the most part, does not convey knowledge. So even if you think knowledge is highest value, you ain't getting it there. Speaking of patterns, which we often do on this channel, which is why it's called Mark of Wisdom Navigating Patterns, I noticed something this week that I had not been able to understand before. What happened was I was looking um, at the Telegram channel that Rachel Fulton Brown and her crew run, the Dragon's Den thing. No, what's it called? Dragon Common Room. Sorry, Rachel, got it wrong. Dragon Common Room stuff and their Telegram channel. And they had posted somebody who was talking about how John D. Rockefeller destroyed education with his General Board of Education in 1903. And there's like a quote from the director of this organization. And it doesn't sound great. It's totally out of context. I couldn't find a reference to the quote. He didn't provide a reference to the quote. I had to look all this up. I knew about some of it, but it always helps to look it up, right? New things come to light. So what happened was, I'm exploring what this General Board of Education did, and you're not going to believe this. Not only did they give the University of Chicago a huge endowment, but they gave lots of money to Harvard and a bunch of other colleges. Now, the assertion in this article is that John D. Rockefeller wanted factory workers, people to work the factories. It was part of this big conspiracy. And that's why the education system is the way it is. It's there to train factory workers. Now, I've seen this over the years, tried to find evidence for this. Even Jordan Peterson talks about this. This seems to be the most false thing promulgating about education that could ever exist. There's no evidence for this. Now, I understand Otto von Bismarck and all that, the Prussian ideals. Like, I get that. There's something there. Standard Oil does not have factories. They do not need factory workers. The idea that John D. Rockefeller would be doing such a thing is absurd. Now, to be fair, they didn't only give money to colleges and universities. They also set up a bunch of schools in the South. That guy sounds like a monster so far. And then I stumbled across a couple of interesting things. The other thing this group did was they eliminated hookworm in the South. Monsters, I tell you, monsters. Like, what do we need a time machine to go back and shoot Hitler for? Let's shoot John D. Rockefeller. My goodness. He saved the whales. This guy's terrible. I am someday going to do a video about this because this really frosts me. They also set up vocational schools. And that's when it hit me. These people, these pseudo-intellectuals, because they're pseudo-intellectuals, these think they're intellectuals. Get me in a verbal room with them for 10 minutes. They'll cry. I'll make them look retarded. Do you know why? Because they are. And revealing the truth is really easy. Keeping up a lie is very hard, but revealing the truth, super simple. Super simple. Everyone's putting way too much effort into these reveal the truth things. If it takes a lot of energy and effort, you're not revealing the truth, guy. You're making a fantasy up. That's what takes the effort. The truth is already there. You just have to point to it. And so again, I looked into this, and they're talking about this education system designed to create factory workers. I can't find any evidence. That's because it's a lie. It's a lie. The factory worker part, the Otto von Bismarck part, is lower education. I agree. Some of that happened for sure. But you know when that happened? A long ass time ago. It doesn't make any sense to correlate that timeline with now. 1903 was quite a ways back, I think, unless my math is wrong. So if they did that in 1903 and the whole thing closed down in like 1936 or something, I think, or maybe it was later, I don't remember, but it was before I was born, then wouldn't that problem have already happened? But you're only talking about it now, and you would have grown up in it, no matter who the hell you are. Are you sure you're qualified to talk about something you grew up in the midst of? Because I'm sure you're not, and you're arrogant enough to think you are, which is a different problem. That's two problems. But then it hit me again like, wow, vocational school to these people is slavery. It's factory work. And factory work is terrible. Factory work built America, actually. Digging ditches for canals, laying rail, working the mills, working the steel plants, building cars on an assembly line. Those people were well paid. Henry Ford set a new standard for wages for uneducated people. Henry Ford changed the world more than any of these clowns alive today who hate Rockefeller ever will or could. But you want to pretend like that's slavery. You want to get rid of the vocational schools. Ask me how I know, because you did it. I was there. I saw it. So don't tell me you didn't do it. Try to gaslight my ass. I'll put you in the hospital. I saw it. You did it. The intellectuals did it. They wanted everybody to go to college like they did. I'm glad I didn't go. Now, look, this isn't actually deliberate on the part of these utter nitwit, pseudo intellectual retards. It's not. It's ironic. You can see these feckless, slightly above midwit pseudo intellectuals are projecting psychologically on the world. They think that the elites run the world, and therefore, if the world is bad, it's their fault. It's not that their idea of the world is wrong, it's that our idea of the world is right, but the elites prevent our idea from being implemented correctly, even though we're trying our hardest. The elites let you try and fail, hoping that you'll learn, and that you never do, which is just puzzling to me. People are incapable of learning. We could go back to the Gaussian midwit meme, which of course I have a whole video on midwit meme that debunks this, but we could go back there, right? People who learn are on the edges, right? They're the stupid people and the elites, and then the pseudo intellectuals in the middle. They're the ones that can't learn anything. That seems right. It cannot be education to them because education is pure and good and valuable. It's valuable to them because it's the only thing they're good for. They wouldn't do well at a factory. They wouldn't do well growing stuff on the ground because they're retarded and they can't handle it. Right? And so it must be the elites that ruined everything. Because clearly education can't be the problem. They've already ruled that out because they're wicked smart and they know that's not true. See the irony? It's deep ignorance and deep inability to switch perspectives and understand other perspectives that causes them to be resentful towards the people above them and the people below them at the same time. The arrogance of it all. Stunning. And the thing is, blaming the elite serves two functions, right? It keeps these up, maybe they're slightly above midwit, in their delusion that education would work, but for, right? Because the reason it's not working is because the evil elites are preventing it. And that's the exception. Like, well, this system would work if, right? The election went this way and not the way I predicted because of this exception happened that, wasn't expected or, okay. No. You were wrong and you won't own up to it because you're retarded and you can't learn. That's what's going on there. Nothing else is going on there. When you're wrong, Joel, I was wrong, and move on with your life and learn something from it. but at least move on with your life and don't sit there and say, oh, it was really ancient aliens or the elites or stop. Just stop. And the thing is, it gives these people a reason to take the role of the elites. Well, the elites are obviously evil because education isn't doing what we thought it would do. And we'll take over, we'll steal their influence and their control, real or imagined, by the way, because a lot of times it's imagined, right? From them. And now we can justify us being at a higher position in the hierarchy. And then we can bitch about that too. Well, we should be paid more money because we have PhDs. I think if you have a PhD and we keep feeding you, you should be grateful because I ain't finding much use for these damn PhDs personally. My father has one, English lit, no less. Don't talk to me about the value of PhDs, please. It's not going to work. Reason you do, I guarantee it. I lived in Boston. I hung out at MIT. I hung out at Harvard. I hung out at Northeastern and Boston University. I was on those campuses all the time talking to people. Now, how do I know what we have lost and why and how? It's easy. They study education, guys. They study it. There's white papers about this. These big-brained idiots have studies all about this. And perhaps that sounds a bit out there, right? But bear with me. In the US, we didn't just take religion out of the schools. That was the psyop. Oh, separation of church and state. We're going to totally misread that clause, tell you it says something that it absolutely does not say. And we're going to remove religion. Well, I was there. I'm just going to tell you what happened because I was there. Or you could look it up, but like I was there. I'm just going to tell you. You can take your anecdotal, because all information is anecdotal, and shove it up your, okay? I'm telling you, this happened. You can look, it's also in the numbers. This is not a secret to anyone. We took out recess. We took out gym. Maybe not entirely, but we took it out, right? We took some out. We took out music and art, in many cases entirely, right out of the schools. And we took out vocational training too. All thanks to pseudo-intellectuals who think that work, physical work, is a lesser. It's unworthy of human participation. Why else would you take it out of the schools? Why else? And the thing is, if you want some evidence for this, I mean, I can't like give you the full suite of evidence or anything here. That would be ridiculous. But here's a thread that you can follow, right? It's NPR too. See, this always bugs me about these people and NPR is lying to you. NPR and CNN are not lying to you. They're perfectly telling you the truth. They're de-emphasizing it and then pretending they didn't say it later, but they tell you this stuff all the time. NPR talked to Dale Farron, right? And if you follow, the paper link is in this other link, right? If you read the article, which is a little hyperbolic, by the way, and you follow the link, you can find more of that work that Dale has done. And her work is pretty clear, right? Children at a young age who do less desk learning and more play learning, where they're not sitting down and being taught propositions, do better later in life. The earlier you do desk learning, the worse your outcomes are. Not right away, but it shows up pretty quick and it persists throughout your life. So just to be clear, the data shows that more participation from children early and less desk learning is far better for any kind of outcome that has been measured. Taking religion out of schools was a smokescreen. And although it's evil enough all by itself and should never have been considered for a half a billionth of an instant, they were just using that to take out all the methods of actual physical participation, which, according to me, is the only way to obtain knowledge. See my most popular talk, 7,600 plus views with Mathieu Peugeot. Thank you very much. He's such a wonderful person. They did that on purpose. Now, where did that come from? You can blame elites if you want. And even if we'll say the elites had implemented such a thing, which there's absolutely no evidence that that happened. Maybe it was facilitated by them in some cases, but with very different goals in mind. There's a spirit there somewhere. That's what coordinates things at that layer of reality, not 9 guys with cigars in a dark room. And given what I said earlier about the UK and their apparent inability to understand what a principle is and their unethical, immoral behavior with their media in particular, but not only their media, one must wonder what their education system has been doing. We weaponized education as the way to move the world. And some evil spirit moved it all right, and we scarcely noticed until the results have now become undeniable. Morals and ethics aren't on the table for discussion with many, many people. They're not ever going to be in that discussion. They don't have the chops. When you're arguing about whether it's okay to have someone else forge a 20-pound note, you've got 2 moral evils already by 2 actors. The fact that you're discussing it and coming to the conclusion that it's okay as long as you don't show the 20-pound note to anyone. I don't know how you do that. This sounds like a mental problem of some kind of mental deficit that I'm not familiar with, actually. And how you put that online, or how your Piers Morgan and someone says, my best friend was black, and you're calling them a racist or implying that they're a racist because their father said something. How you don't understand how unbelievably impolite, inappropriate, bad, wrong, and dare I say it, and I will, evil that is, I don't know, but you got some kind of problem that I cannot understand. And we need to do something about that. That's bad enough to happen anywhere at all, ever. But my goodness, for that to happen in public on a broadcast medium, and I'm looking at you too, YouTube. YouTube shouldn't allow that nonsense either. But, and that was on YouTube to be fair, but also the BBC shouldn't be like, what are they doing? Piers right now looks so bad, I can't even tell you. The problem is no one's going to do anything about it. Nothing's going to change because action changes the world, not words. And this is the age of gnosis problem. But what do we do? How did this happen? The propositional tyranny forced upon us by those who are better than average at using language and words, sometimes just words and not language, by the way. And note that boosts their ego. That's part of the issue. The individualism, which again feeds your ego, because just like you and God and nature all getting along together, right? And then, well, if that's true for me, it must be true for kids. They can just grow themselves up, right? Feeds the kids' ego and form themselves, right? And that creates a vacuum into which flows pure evil where possible. See how it increases the evil in the world? And then you're treating the world as material objects, which you can have, right? You can have it. It feeds your ego. You can have material by definition. And that's a sign of value. And that forces us, to some extent, to preserve wealth for ourselves rather than to use it to build for the future. Whether that be building 1,200 houses instead of a cathedral, or that is building up the family wealth in case of a family emergency that needs the help of all the family to solve. It's sort of like a local insurance rather than a global insurance company stealing all my money and not giving me any value for my health care. Wouldn't that be better? Huh, we had the solution all along. In fact, we used to use that solution. What are we doing? We're holding up knowledge as the highest value. And it's just mere propositions that we're referring to because it's all we have, whether it be books or words. Age of Gnosis, indeed, confirmed. That's how we got here. And destroying the false idea that words in and of themselves are valuable. That, oh, well, because someone's father said something and the environment forms you, then you therefore must be racist, even though you have a black best friend. What good is evidence in the age of Gnosis? Why do you think evidence doesn't work on people? Why do you think they were able to get away with the fake news virus scamdemic? Because they propositionally told you over and over and over again, that might be important, that certain things were true and backed by, quote, science, when people like me, who had actually read the science long before any of this happened, knew full well that was a lie. And to this day, people won't call out liars. Super important, and you're going to find out why when that new animation video comes out. I'm going to show you why. The minute somebody lies, the picosecond a lie is finished coming out of someone's mouth, you need to immediately call that out. There's a technical reason why this is true. That new video will go through it. Not going to be the next video I release, but it will be out within the next week and a half at the most. I haven't decided yet. It depends how much I record, right? I don't want to send out a bunch of videos and then have none to send out. We're coming up on more holidays. Understanding that all the value is in the future, and we need to lay the groundwork for future generations. That's the way out. We've just spent 3 or maybe more generations not doing that. And hopefully you can see how it would take 3 generations since the selfish generation to cause the collapse to be undeniable, to cause it to be so visible you can't wave it away anymore. And sure, it happened long ago, but momentum and scaling, hierarchy, right, means that things take time to unfold. The higher the scale, the more time it takes. Welcome to the hell that we have created in the age of Gnosis. And the thing is, until we can admit the problem, talk about it, say, hey, this happened, and then take steps to adjust our course, right, to do something, right, we will never be able to get the mea culpa required to knit the world back together. All the go to church in the world isn't going to fix this. There's still a family split at the lower level. I don't like the generational framing. I find it unbelievably unhelpful. The problem is the observation is true and correct. That doesn't mean you have a good problem formulation. You just have a good symptom description. I agree with the description of the symptom. That's not the problem, though. That's the symptom. What's the problem? The problem is the age of Gnosis, which forces you into an intimacy crisis. That's the problem. If you frame it as modernity, you're never going to fix it because modernity cannot be made any sense of using the English language, and translating it to another language ain't going to help either because of the nature of the meaning, or definition of the word modern. Translating that definitionally into another language does not change the nature of that term and what it refers to and what it can and cannot refer to, more importantly. And that's why we're never going to make any progress on this until we straighten up and get a good problem formulation in the form of the age of Gnosis, causing the intimacy crisis, which leads to a symptom called the meaning crisis. You can't fix a meaning crisis because you can't inject meaning into the world. The meaning is already available in the potential of the world. That's why you will need to buy my book in order to start fixing this crisis. Let me get back to my camera. I can see. There we go. And the book should be for sale soon, or at least pre-order very soon on the website. But it is not today, which makes me quite upset. But I do not control such things, unfortunately. Because if I controlled the world, it would be a very different world indeed. All right. That, my friends, is all I have for my ranty monologue, which I kept to under an hour, which is amazing given the number of notes I had. All right. Well, I'm quite happy with myself over that. Yes, Ixnon. Wicked smart, as they say. Oh, I came up with a new one today. What was it? I can't remember. It was so funny. I told it to Sarah and she laughed. Um, yes, buy one of these for Gen Z so that you can throw the truth around and it'll come back. It's beautiful. And I'll do a video. We'll post videos and stuff. Ixnon, Dragon Common Room is an interesting image. They have many interesting images, mostly medieval. Yeah, they're working on a writing project, which obviously I'm not going to say no. And if anyone can pull it off, her crew can for sure. There's no question about that. But also, a lot of the people that are in the most need don't read or read the wrong things. Yes, Lynn, isn't it interesting? I know what you're talking. A lot of people just they never look things up, and actually Wikipedia is not wrong about everything, and there's certain things that they ignore. Uh, Tracking such a thing is ridiculous. I mean, I've done it, but I don't recommend anybody else do it. It's a lot of work. Even Wikipedia is not mean to Rockefeller the way these clowns who write blogs are. Sally Joe, it's okay to pee in the Cheerios as long as you don't show anyone. Exactly. As long as nobody notices you spit in the food. Like, what? Young God, I think the phenomena of replacing make with do is interesting. I do comments. I don't make comments. That at least that is an upgrade to the usage of the language, so I can appreciate that for sure. And I think I'm all up to date here. Yeah, I mean, being more precise in your speech, as Jordan Peterson points out, I think I'm a yes on that. And yeah, I mean, to me, the issue is it's very hard to do. Most people can't do it, and if you're high literacy but low comprehension, it won't help. Because if you watch Peterson on Jubilee, you'll notice those people had huge vocabulary. One of them even used a word I didn't. Crap, I find new words maybe twice a year, and I swim with the big boys all the time, right? I'm reading white papers and all kinds of crazy crap, and running into Rachel Fulton Brown, who probably knows a bunch of words I've never heard, right? Just given that medieval studies. But like I was shocked. And but they were using words completely wrong, like agnostic atheist. There's no such thing. There can never possibly be an agnostic atheist, right? The two terms have a mutual exclusion built within them. But, these people have very high vocabularies and very poor comprehension of the language. And we haven't noticed. And I did an earlier live stream on that. That you can reference. I don't know where it is off the top of my head. Maybe I'll remember to go back and link it someday. I really need to write a little AI to go and put in all the links on all my videos because I have a bunch of videos too that are recorded where I referred to future videos that I hadn't made yet. And I've actually rather deliberately, because I actually understand all this technology, um, did that in such a way that it should be really easy for an AI to find all those points and then at least give them to me, if not go in and do the rest of the automation. I do need to load up that MCP server that allegedly can manipulate YouTube videos, because then I could put all that automation together and get it working. But it's so hard. I mean, they're changing everything all the time. Half the time I fire up one of my AIs, it's broken because they've changed something. And it's like, what are you doing? Can you just let it work for a while so I can use it? Nope, we've changed this. We've moved that. We've updated this. And that's a side effect of the age of gnosis. Part of the problem is, in terms of propositions, there's basically an infinite number of combinations of propositions for all intents and purposes, at least from the human perspective. And therefore, it just keeps going. And once you value that value, because there's a lot of it out there, we're just making more and more and more knowledge effectively, or propositional knowledge anyway, which isn't real knowledge. And then people are valuing that more and more and more and more and more. And everything just moves faster because of that one fact alone. And so it's not enough to write a piece of software. You have to keep writing that software and keep expanding it and keep putting in features and keep doing this now, because you didn't even fix the bugs you had in the beginning. And now you're building in the tech industry for some time now, technical debt, stupid terminology. But it's not even wrong. It's just annoying. But that's what happens with age of gnosis is more knowledge is better. Knowledge is just propositions, but there's an infinite number of propositions if you combine them. So again, at least from the perspective of humans, I know mathematically in the math imaginary world, but we don't live in the math imaginary world, thank goodness. That's not true, but there's more combinations of propositions than there is capacity in your brain, that's for sure. And that's true of everybody. Like no one's exempt from that. Some have more, some have less, fair enough, but no one has infinite and no one has more than the combination of propositions, especially because there's a lot more concepts and you can just add propositions when you run across new concepts. It's kind of how language works, by the way. Ooh, who knew? Um, when we don't take this into account, we get trapped. And that's why education is so valuable, because it's basically the thesis of the age of gnosis. The most valuable person is the most educated person. Of course. And the thing is, it doesn't work. It doesn't correlate at all, right? Almost all the self-made millionaires in the United States didn't finish college. And a good portion of them never finished high school. So even if you're using a material measure of success in money, there's no way using the available evidence that you could come to the conclusion that education is valuable. You just would never come to that conclusion. So I don't know where the materialists, because they are materialists, are even getting this from, but I do understand why they're resentful and angry. And now that I've seen this, oh, they think vocational school is training for factories when it couldn't be further from what it is, right? It couldn't actually be further from training for factories. Vocational school teaches you how to interact with real things in the real world that are important, that matter. And it teaches you, or at least filters out people who can only do rote mechanical work, i.e., work in a factory, and they can't be trained to do anything more because those people exist. And I want to make sure they have a job. I don't want robots doing that work. Robots is just electronic slavery for other people that are far away. You didn't think about that, did you? Right? So when you think about it that way, you start to realize, oh, vocational school is super useful compared to college because these people get practical skills, and the really smart ones will be able to do more with it. And the really dumb ones will at least have some way to do anything at all. That's beautiful. I want to live in that world where it's integrated, where people have a place in the hierarchy, where they know that place and they can be comfortable there and they don't have to be forced in and out of various jobs because someone changed a law or some politician wanted to make some fantasy happen, which is what we're suffering through right now. We've sort of posited a world where education solves a problem. It only creates problems. Now, if you have, as you had in the past, a proper ivory tower system where the academics are, we'll say, protected from the outside world, and the outside world is protected from the crazy idea of academic, because I got to tell you guys, I'm not saying there aren't any, but Almost all of the academics I know had at least one really crazy idea that was so far out there, you could scarcely believe anybody could be that logical here and that irrational here at the same time. That's really common pattern in academia, especially among the really, really smart people, right? You start to read about some of these people. Feynman is a prime example. So brilliant, so many cool things. And then some of the stuff is just like, what? Wait, what happened? A lot of these academics are also happy to experiment with mind altering substances and polyamory. Most drug use is in the medical and academic fields. It's not among the factory workers. And there's more factory workers. Oops. Drug use, especially drug abuse, actually correlates with higher academically inclined people. Oops. It's exactly backwards. Yongott, I think the intelligence trivial knowledge bit is that it's supposed parallel sense of humor, which is supposed to attract women. No. A wicked smart guy is supposedly in a woman's mind a very funny guy. No, if you make women laugh, they will like you. If you're good looking, they'll like you. It's kind of that simple. If you're both, and some women are very impressed by intelligence, but actually, most women want a guy, at least in the things that they care about, who's dumber than they are, that they can manipulate because it's very important. And I would say, like, that's fair. Like, they have to have some power in the relationship. The men have the physical power on average over the women that just already happened to us. There's not much we can do about it. There's no use in crying over spilt milk. If you reliably, and usually I think people, especially nowadays, are really confused about this because they want to live in the land of irony or something because they think they're good at being ironic or whatever. I don't know. I don't understand the quote psychology behind this nonsense. So they make a yoke out of everything's a yoke. It's a yoke. It's Ukraine's gonna blow up the world and cause a world war. Yeah, it's a yoke. This is stupid. People want to be entertained by complete fantasies or trivialities. Being around me for a day is all about me just creating bizarre trivialities into world altering events. And if you have a reasonable sense of humor, it's quite fun. My friends love hanging out with me because I just say stupid stuff all the time. And it's so absurd. It's a fun time. It's a totally fun time. I'm the type of person that'll be like, you didn't wipe up the spaghetti sauce from last night? Do you understand that that's going to destroy the whole world? What is wrong with you? Where were you educated? Didn't anybody teach you to clean up after yourself? Did you grow up in a barn? And I'll just be totally hyperbolic about the whole thing, which I actually don't care about, but it's fun and interesting to use, we'll say, the flaws of the current culture to make trivial things more important than they are, which is very much what we've been doing, uh, for a little amusement. But it has to be trivial. If you're trivializing something important, you're not putting anybody at ease. That's not as funny as you think it is. And they may laugh along with you because they like get the joke, but they're not getting the comfort from that. And I think people are confused about that because they have this flat view of humor. Oh, anything funny is humor. I don't know about that. I know a lot of funny things, and it's like, well, that's a laugh or cry situation. And the fact that you're laughing just means you're too stupid to cry about it. Well, that happens too. That's a big problem. And I don't think people account for that. I think they think, oh, well, humor will just solve it because nothing will be important, which isn't true and also isn't good for you. And therefore, and that's a problem. And I think that's why people have a hard time understanding trolls and trolling. Because trolling is a coping mechanism to get more attention because you didn't have enough as a child because your parents didn't form you. And fair enough, but trolling's not all that funny. And it's not that there's no humor in it. And that's the problem. I don't think people know that because it hasn't been formed into them not to do that. They haven't been formed with good manners. They haven't been informed by politeness. They haven't had that exemplified for them. I was fortunate. I had that exemplified for me, but I have people that are around my age that didn't. And they're alone right now. I wonder what that's about. Sally Joe M. Cooper. People use humor to degrade the integrity of relationships. Yep. And demean the world worse. That is correct. Way too often. Exactly. And why might we, in particular, have a problem with this? Because our motto is to be better. Why? Because the world needs you. The world needs you. So be better. In order for the world to be better, you need to be better. You need to do anything else, by the way. You just need to be better. Everything else take care of itself. Don't worry about the war in Ukraine. Even if they manage a peace deal, there'll be war in Europe by the end of next year. These guys are chomping at the bit. They're going to get it. They're going to, by hook or by crook, they will. If you didn't get the reference, I've been rewatching The Prisoner, which I thoroughly enjoy. If you haven't seen the original 60s Prisoner, which used to be the greatest TV show of all time. Maybe Breaking Bad is better, but I'm a Prisoner fan all the way. There's another Talbot I came up with. I might put this in a video someday. Somebody says they're like a film and TV critic, and you ask them like, well, what do you think of The Prisoner? And they don't know it. They're not a film and TV critic worth anything, because that TV show influenced so many other things. It's ridiculous. And so if they don't know about that, if they haven't started with the old stuff for their level of critique, the odds that they're going to be any good at it are actually zero, right? Like that they're just, because they're going to misread where things come from and what they mean, because those meanings are based on previous iterations from great men, right? Which Patrick McGowan was doing Danger Man or Secret Agent Man, depending upon if you're in America or the UK. And then from that came his ideas around The Prisoner, which steals heavily from that series, which we watched that first. So I saw that whole thing, which I'd wanted to do for years. And then we started watching The Prisoner. And I was like, aha, because I found a couple of instances, actually, one of which no one ever told me about, despite I have friends who introduced me to The Prisoner, obviously, who know it better than I do, that were stolen from Danger Man and put into The Prisoner. And I was like, ah, because I know The Prisoner so well because I've seen it hundreds of times. But yeah, that's a good tell. Like, and I use that trick all the time. I used to ask people, like, there were certain physics things you can ask people to know how good a physicist they are. And I just happen to have memorized those questions and answers. And therefore I can tell right away. Like, it doesn't take long, right? It doesn't take long. Like you can ask somebody, what do you think about Mond? And if they don't know what Mond is and they're a physicist, then maybe don't talk to them about physics. I mean, I'm sure they know more about the weather. It'll be fine. It'll be fine. MON stands for modified Newtonian dynamics, by the way, which is basically the thesis that you can use the Newtonian system with a minor modification at distance. In other words, Newtonian dynamics changes at scale, which seems extremely likely, by the way. It's one way to get around the dark matter problem, is MOND. So an alternative dark matter is called MOND. So if they don't know about that, and like, fair enough, like, I guess, but I mean, if it's your field and I know more about it than you do, then you're screwed. Like, you're just not good at what you do. It's not that hard. I don't specialize in physics. I never did. I never took a physics course ever. Right? I can barely do some forms of advanced math with a lot of pain and a computer. So it's these little tricks that you can learn and use to know which experts to listen to. But quite honestly, most people will never be able to do that. First, they don't have the access. I have the access to these people. I could ask them about these things and they could tell me, oh, Here's what I use to figure out if somebody knows something about this field. Oh, okay. And I can just memorize things, thankfully. So I did. Maybe you can't. That's okay. Don't trust the experts, though. Because how do you know if they're experts? A bunch of people believe Dr. Fauci. He was never an expert. He's a con man pulling the same con he had pulled in the 80s. And nobody figured this out. He did the same damn thing. It was the exact same thing. Twice. Why didn't you catch him the first time and throw him in prison? My goodness, you let him do it again? He's still not in prison? What's going on? The BBC edits a whole video to make Trump say a bunch of things he never said. Why aren't these people in prison now? You don't need trials for that. This is all public. This is public. You don't need trials for public things. You need trials when there's a question. There's no question about whether or not they did it. Of course they did it. They're in an email saying, we did this. Okay, fair enough. I agree you did that. Also, you need to go to prison and we're going to seize all your assets and give them to the poor. How's that? That's my form of redistribution right there. If you're wealthy and you get caught doing something evil, you lose all your wealth and we redistribute it. How's that? I like that plan a lot. Why can't we do that? We used to do that. Seems reasonable to me. I don't know. It seems reasonable to me. If it's not reasonable, come and argue with me about it. I'd love to hear your quote reasoning. And if you don't have a reason, maybe you're not good at that. A lot of people aren't good at logic, reason, and rationality. They're living in a binary frame. They think things are symmetrical and they can be swapped. Well, they can't. That's not valid. It's not good. And it's not going to work. It's not going to work for me. It's not going to work for you. It's not going to work for anybody. We need to live in a world where we cultivate constraint and consequence, not try to be free of it. Listen closely to how people are using freedom. They want freedom from consequence and constraint. That's how they're using the term. And that's the problem. We're stuck in this world where screw it, might as well just make a joke out of everything because there's a bunch of bad guys running around that we can do absolutely nothing about and that nobody will punish. I understand that. Non-communitivity is no joke. What is communitivity? Is that supposed to be a math term? Because I don't even think it's that, but you can let me know. Do you mean the transitive property in mathematics? Because that's a big problem. People are misusing that left, right, and center. That's the way I learned it anyway. Who knows what they're teaching the kids nowadays with the new math? New math, same as the old math, except it doesn't work and it's not useful and it's wrong. But other than that, it's the same. It's all just social justice after all. And it's too bad, it really is, because there's no reason. Like, we know how to run a world better. And nobody wants to go back. Everyone's like, we can't go back. I'm like, I don't know, we can. That's like really the easiest thing in the world is to do something you've already done and know how to do. That's just a lie. And it's an obvious lie. There's other lies too. Like you can sit there basically and say, look, we can't just throw the bad actors in the Epstein case in jail. We can't just prosecute them. We can't really do anything about that. And that's a lie. Of course, you can. What you should do and what you can do are different. But you can't keep saying we can't do something that we can do. Like, you can't tell me that every time where's my phone? I don't even know where my phone is. Excellent. Every time my phone rings and we've got one of these freaking robocalls on it, and it's like, you can't stop the robocallers who are calling me with loan offers all the time from calling me. And they go, no, we can't stop it. And I'm like, that's a lie, dude. I could stop it. I know how. Like, this is not hard, actually, at all. We can totally put an end to that overnight. So don't tell me we can't when I know we can. That's not good. You're gaslighting people. That's the kind of gaslighting that gets people. It's not a conspiracy. So telling people that is not helpful because they know it's a lie. I could stop those people in a heartbeat. I'd throw them in prison and seize all their assets because I think that's the right answer. But whatever, you do you. It's fine. But we can stop them. There's nothing technologically difficult about putting an end to that stuff. Nothing at all. But they're not doing it and they're telling you they can't be done. And that's not correct. It's not our priority. We're not going to put time into that. It's too expensive, or it's true. Like, if we do this, we can't do these other things. Those are all valid reasons. We can't do that is not a valid reason. That's a lie. And people need to call them out for that and say things like, well, if you can't, why don't you give me the authority and I'll show you how? Right. Until they shut up. Because the least they could do is shut up. Don't lie to people. Just shut your mouth. It's not that hard. If you don't know what you're talking about, just be quiet. I do that all the time. No one notices because you're quiet. People don't notice you when you're quiet. I have this clip. I'm going to find the clip somewhere. It was on Father Eric's channel. This is probably a year and a half ago now. And Ted was there. And I told him, I said, dude, this is a trick. This is a trick. He said something like, Mark, when you say things, I usually calculate that, about 60% of the time you're correct. And he said, I just realized it's way higher than that. And I'm like, yeah, it is. And I told him, I said, that's because when I don't know what's being spoken about, I'm just quiet and I listen. And that had just happened. So I said, when you guys were all talking about this, and I wasn't at that event even, I just didn't say anything. I just sat back and listened. And he had to think about it. And he realized, oh, that's the trick. It's not that hard. When people are discussing something and you don't know anything about it, and maybe you don't even have any questions, or maybe you shouldn't have any questions right away. Maybe you should just wait and see what you can work out for yourself. And you're just quiet and you're not sitting back cracking yolks. That's so funny, yolks. And you're just listening. Maybe that makes you seem smarter. The wise man is the one who keeps his mouth shut. Yeah, pretty much. That's why wise people don't talk that much. This isn't hard. It's not magic. When I was growing up, it was called common sense. We've all lost any common anything, much less sense. I get that. But also, what are we doing? What are we doing? According to Tom Lehrer, I feel like we went over this earlier somehow. Addition is commutative. Again, look, my math is never good, but it's the matrix multiplication's factoid that xy is not the same as yx. Also, if you mix multiplication and addition and subtraction, order matters and the transitive property goes away. It no longer applies. Sally, no, Mark. Tell us about the pigments shading 3D form, 3D farm. Is it form? Yeah, it's form or livestock. You won't educate me on these. You're not from California if you won't. Yeah, I don't know what you're talking about. I have no idea what any of that is. I know what the word livestock means. I know people from California would probably do that to you too, Sally, because people from California universally seem to have that problem of telling other people all about the things they clearly know nothing about because they live in California in the city. In general, seem to have that seems to be a property of the city. Down south, the number of people that like try to just tell me random stuff is vanishingly small to the point of being almost zero. Um, unless it's something they actually know about or I ask them about. They're super polite down here. It's pretty good. It's pretty good. Sarcasm, Mark. Sarcasm. Yeah, well, I did take it as such. But up north, everybody wants to tell you everything about whatever you mention. It's not. I think California is America's France. Well, parts of it certainly seem to be that way. There really is. It really is at least 3 states. It should probably be 5 states. A lot of people have talked about this. This isn't anything I came up with, but uh, I really haven't spent time in LA. I was at LA airport once, and then the nice, kind lady at the desk gave me a first class flight from LA to San Jose. Let me tell you, man, if you haven't flown first class, this is free for me. You really gotta. If you have the money ever to take even a short, because this is LA to San Jose is nothing. Um, Even a short class trip in first class, you gotta do that. I mean, you may regret ever flying any other way, like I have ever since. But also, it is like it's not even the same thing. We're not even talking about the same thing. It's not even the same mode of travel. You're not living in the same universe with the same physics. Like everything's different. It's amazing. It's so amazing. Such a kind lady. Uh, Thank you, customer service person at the Charlotte airport that day. And I like there wasn't even anything wrong. Like there was a little screw up that I wasn't mad about. I had plenty of time at the airport. I'm just like, yeah, whatever. I didn't my TSA pre-check's not showing up. And she's kindly explaining to me, oh, we've got a new system. And if this doesn't match that, then it screws up. And you'll have to fix it when you get home. And I'm like, okay, whatever. And she just issued me my tickets. And I glanced at it real quick, but whatever. I'm in the airport. I'm trying to get out of the way. There's people in line. The nice lady. Of course, I made her laugh. Um, you know, it, self denigrating humor, the whole 9 yards. It was great. And she's a really nice person. And then, yeah, lo and behold, like I'm staring at my ticket for the second leg and I'm like, this ticket can't be right. There's all sorts of things wrong with the ticket. And I'm just like, what is happening here? But it was wonderful. Wonderful. Young God can read sarcasm through text. That's funny. Lol, we should look at the climate overlap on Paris and LA. No, there isn't any actually. Um, no, I think the problem with California is Spain because it was conquered by Spain. See Colin Woodard's excellent book, American Nations. Uh, and yeah, I mean, I'm generally for the idea that Spain is a problem. So, yeah, Spain and Portugal are their idea of colonization is a little horrifying. England like to bring like English values with them. I don't know if Spain and Portugal have Spanish and Portuguese values. I gotta say, I love my Spanish and Portuguese friends, but also, I don't know. I don't know. California is like the Atlantic Iberian Peninsula coast. Sure, that could be. Hence why the Spanish culture fits so well in that climate. Well, the Spanish Yeah, it could be. Uh, yeah, it's also a weird place because it's such a big state and there's so many parts to it. And like just driving from the Bay Area, from San Jose up to Sacramento, wow. You go through 3 different climates basically. It's bizarre and that's only a couple hours. Um, yeah, it's weird. It's weird. Ixnay, California was Spain and then left coast Yankees. I I don't know. I mean, it just the whole western part of the state on the other side of the Rockies is weird. Because like, Northern California is all Republicans, and it's fine. And California's majority Republican state, always was, by the way, um, just like Massachusetts. Oh, Massachusetts isn't anymore, but they used to be when I was growing up. How they keep electing Democrats is beyond me, but I guess gerrymandering works out really well when you're the minority party. Hmm. Anyway, um, yeah, the North is full of mind your business conservatives and mind your business hippies and anarchists. That's Northern California. But the center is like 3 different places because you've got the Bay Area and Sacramento and the stuff in between. And then Southern California, I don't even know what the hell that is. That's a mess. And then there's all of these water rights things in place that people are manipulating and taking full advantage of. And, it's a big mess because it's based on contract law. And yeah, when you have, 300-year contracts for water rights in the mountains and you're trucking it, well, sending it all the way down, trucking was a bad word there. Sending it in a big open ditch all the way down to Southern California, you run into problems. Sally, nah, Yankees are not an out west thing. Yeah, that's well, they got into part of the Midwest, Sally. Yeah, God, Florida was Spain. Yep, California was Spain. This is what wooden boats can do. Yeah, well, they came up into that section through South America. So yeah, the wooden boats got them onto the continent, and then it just turns out it's all attached. So you can just go up that way. I think if I remember correctly, the center of Mexico, or what we call Mexico, is that like Mexico is not a real place. I don't know what to tell you, but it's not. That was just a mess, and nobody wanted to go there because it's a bunch of warring tribes. So that's why they went up the western coast. And that's how they got on that side of the Rockies and not on the other side. Although a bunch of them hopped the mountains, and there were a bunch of Spanish and Portuguese Jesuits up there. And the Jesuits, man, like when they're great, they're great. And when they're not, they're really bad. There's a bunch of points that some of the Protestant denominations have about the Jesuits doing bad things because the Jesuits did a lot of bad things. It's just they're not on balance bad, but when they're bad, they're very effective. When they're good, they're very effective too. But yeah, it's a bit of a mess. Um, yeah, it it's really hard for people who have been quote educated recently because they've been formed, not educated, in a very specific way. And the formation that wasn't being done by their parents was done by the schools. And I think once you see it that way, once you start looking and you realize, oh, there's a formation vacuum, the parents aren't forming the children, then you see a fight in educational circles to form children. That's why, because that formation wasn't appropriately placed. You weren't being informed by your parents and your church experience. So you were being formed in school. That's a problem. And Dale Farron has the goods to kind of prove this. So I think that's where this sort of issue comes from, is from that engagement. Super important to understand these things because It's not a psyop. It's not like deliberate. It's just a pattern that happens as the result of certain, we'll say, factors that aren't optional in the world. There's a bunch of things that have to happen together. And, you can't pull one lever without pulling several things. And we keep pulling random levers and not realizing the consequences. And that's why people want freedom. They want freedom from consequence and constraint so they can build the world out of raw Legos in any form they wish. That's just not the created order we were born into. And that's where people are confused. And it's too bad. There's no reason for that, right? They could just not be stupid. That would work just as well. But, you know, we're living in a world where we're not taking responsibility for others. We're trying to be individuals. And the side effect of trying to be apart from the world is that you also don't think that other people need to be part of the world. And so you separate yourself from them and you expect them to separate themselves too. Otherwise, it reveals that your system doesn't work and you're not an individual. And that's the people really want to be individuals for some reason. Uh, and they've been sold that lie rather effectively. And they're just splitting the world apart. It's very Protestant, right? Identifying for yourself or as yourself or identifying yourself is all splitting from the natural created order of the universe. Like, it's not that hard. Why people don't understand this, I don't know. It seems obvious just from observing the world, but people are horrifically confused about this. I just can't figure out why. It doesn't This is the puzzle. I mean, this is my whole channel is like, why are you people confused? This is the easy stuff. Imagine what happens when they go to the hard questions. Yeah, that's it. Yon God, they're taking away all the DDR end times. Maybe. Ixnon, freedom from constraint was called emancipation. That's a good point. I never thought of it that way. You're right. Emancipation. Yeah. There was a big argument before the Civil War about, okay, we agree with you nutbags because the abolitionists were nutbags. By the way, the abolitionists uh and the lobby to get rid of alcohol entirely are the same people. So the people who advocated for no slavery also advocated for no alcohol. Um, the abolitionists would appeal to the moderate factions, basically, and the moderates were like, "You guys are crazy." And it's not that we disagree with you about slavery; we just disagree on what to do about it. They were perfectly, and Colin Woodard actually goes over this. They were perfectly happy to let the problem, take care of itself over time by making slavery less and less legal and then running out of slaves eventually. And, we could argue whether or not that was a better or worse strategy. Um, and their reasoning, and all of this is written down. This is why I'm always puzzled. I'm like, do people ever read anything about anything? Because I read this. Like, you could go look it up from original sources. It's not like they didn't have writing before the Civil War, right? Like, it's all published. The argument was, well, if we conduct a war, A, we've got a war. Wars are very uncontrollable. And B, at the end of the war, what do you have? You have a bunch of people who have never lived on their own and been autonomous, trying to live on their own and being autonomous. And we can argue about the 40 acres and a mule thing, and fair enough. But it's not like no one did that. Like, 40 acres and a mule happened for a bunch of people. It just didn't work. Ah, and that's really the problem, is people don't know that. People absolutely don't know that. Sally Joe M. Cooper, or thinking that you can even get to be one simple thing. Exactly. You can reduce yourself down to one thing. You are many complex things with responsibilities to many other things. Yeah, relationships to, and therefore responsibilities for many other things. Northwest Line. I love trains. These sorts of things I was never taught in school. Never. Yeah, neither was I, for the most part. I mean, some of them I was, but also, how you put things together matters, and whether or not you even have the skill to do so. So I'll give you a quick story because I like this particular story. So you might know of a guy named Edward Snowden. Um, Funniest thing ever, for real. The thing that Edward Snowden is known for, not we'll say necessarily exactly what he did, was quote revealing that the government was spying on people, you know, tapping international phone calls. That was one of the many facts that we'll say the media had picked up on. 2 years before Edward Snowden, CNN reported on that all by themselves. That information had already been made public and was well known and had been largely reported on all the major media networks. No one ever talks about this. Why? I don't know. I suspect they're retarded. The reason why is because I've talked to them and they seem to be retarded. It's not that hard, right? Um, but they never put it together that, oh, we already knew this. And of course, they also never put together that, walk with me here. I know it's going to be real difficult. I hope you're sitting down. In order to spy on people, let's say they're known terrorists, even that are calling the United States, you have to tap a phone line. Phone lines don't function in the world if there's only one person on it. And so if you wanted to tap the phone line from an international call, which is doable, like you can't tap all the phones in the United States. That's just technically impossible to this day. But you can tap all the international lines because that's just right at the edge of what we can actually do from a technical perspective. Because a phone doesn't work if there's not someone on the other end, of course you're spying on American citizens in that instance. It's just that you're only ever spying on the guilty ones. And I really don't care. You've abrogated your rights by talking internationally. And if they don't misuse that for people who will say are talking internationally, but aren't talking about terrorism and aren't involved in terrorism, who cares? It's still a good thing. Okay. Nobody ever had that discussion because they're all nitwits. Just remember, this was reported on CNN too. Just cracked me up when they reported this. The profession with the lowest average IQ is journalism. Not making it up. They totally reported that. Completely cracked me up. I'm like, yeah, yes. And there are some notable exceptions, don't get me wrong, but also they're exceptions. It's not a good sign. It's not a good sign. It's not. Another problem people have is thinking all slavery is chattel slavery. Yes. Yes. Where'd you learn that from? That's very smart. Uh, yeah, they equate slavery with chattel slavery. And I think the sort of biblical idea is that we're all slaves to something and someone is a lot more useful because, boy, is that true. Like, then you don't get into this whole like audience capture. Yes, if you want to have an audience, you have to cater to them. When you're catering to somebody, you are technically some form of a slave. That is true. That is also not audience capture because audience capture is a made up term to make you sound smart, even though you're a nitwit. Right. Exactly. Yeah, you can't differentiate types of slavery. Well, chattel slavery is clearly evil. Like, let's just right. Also, just something to think about. I'm not going to make a claim here. I'm just going to give you something to think about. Why don't you try to tell me what the difference between, let's say, the socialist utopia where you get free housing, free food, and free medical care, and slavery, chattel slavery is exactly. Just write it down. It's a little personal experiment. I don't want to hear it in the comments because I don't care. I'm just saying, I'm just saying, from a material perspective, just let me know. Inform yourself. Lynn, Obama had announced that those US citizens with a large amount of time on their cells was listened to. I remember as well. Yeah, I mean, and the thing is, they were targeting international calls. And if it's a call, there's two people involved. And if they're targeting it and they're a US agency, one of the people involved is from the United States. Like, I don't understand why this isn't obvious to everybody. Are you saying nobody should ever tap a phone call while they're planning a bombing and to kill thousands of people? Because I'm going to call you a psychopathic lunatic and call for you to be locked up in an insane asylum if that's what you're saying. I'm sorry, but like, this isn't that hard. Sally Joe, even if Elizabeth, why would you mention a female version of Satan? Even if Elizabeth Warren makes some trades on Elizabeth Warren is so much more evil for so many other things. I can't even like if you want a study in female evil, she's it. The woman used to work for banks and insurance companies, and she hasn't stopped working for banks and insurance companies. That's all I've got to say about that. The Consumer Financial Protection Board wrote me a letter and say, "Yeah, we know the bank lied to you, but we're not going to reopen your case." But the bank like I could take this to a court. Like, what are you talking about? No, case is closed. I'm like, but you didn't do anything. You just forced them to write me a letter that was full of lies and put it in a file and close the case. That was Elizabeth Warren's project. Gee, Mark, why are you poor? I don't know. They stole a $500,000 house from me. Thanks, Elizabeth Satan Warren. Barack Satan Obama. My goodness. Beyond God. Elizabeth Warren could be a better actress. No, she really can't. The joke is women cannot method. Well, yeah, that just completely pisses me off. Just knowing that she is not locked up and all her assets have not been seized by now. Just like that's just like, why have a justice system? Why bother? Just get rid of the whole damn thing if you're going to let her run around and do that bullshit. Northwest line. My iPhone spies on me all the time. Maybe, maybe not. Who cares? No one cares about you, dude. No one's spying on you. I'm sorry, but you're just not that interesting. And the information seems to find itself everywhere. The cookies. Even how X uses that information to route my posts to my attention, and I don't even use X on my phone. There's a lot of data brokers out there. Yeah, I found some connections. I was like, oh, well, that's an unexpected connection. They're buying data from Facebook, right? Or, Facebook is buying data from all these other places. I see them every once in a while only because I just happen to be able to remember lots of important things, and I do, which is not really an advantage. If you've ever had a traumatic experience and you also happen to have a very good memory, these are not a good combination. Really not good. It's not happy. It's not a happy combination. Ask me how I know. Um, so yeah, I mean, hopefully you can see sort of the problem of education, how it's tied into the age of gnosis, and why the battle over how we educate our children is a battle because education's out the window. It was formation. That was the issue. And I got to do some more research on where that comes from. But I think the abrogation of the duty of parents to form their children comes from Dr. Spock, but I got to do some more. Northwest line. Is all social media just an excuse to collect your data and sell it to the highest bidder? No, it's a side effect. There's nothing to do with that. Look, Mark Zuckerberg, like, I don't like the guy. I don't think he's particularly smart. He's a bit of an idiot. And he's arrogant as all get go. But I don't like hate him or anything, right? He's basically an idealist. Like all the tech bros are idealists. It's just the problem is they're a little dumb. And by a little, I mean I'm lying. They're really stupid about the world because they don't live in the world. They live in the computer, and fair enough. Spent my time in the computer. Um, so they don't understand how the world works. But they want to manipulate this thing that they don't understand. I mean, Zuckerberg just wanted to get laid. He's pretty clear about that. And he wanted to enable other geeks like him to get laid because he's pretty communal in that way. Now he's an antisocial autistic retard, but his motives were pure. It's just that how do you pay for that? Well, you can't charge people for that interaction. So the inevitable conclusion is you're going to sell the damn data. Of course you are. You're going to sell the fact that the eyeballs are accessing for their reasons, to know people, to talk to people, to share things. Someone's got to pay for that. Nothing's free. This is why I hate people use the word free. I'm like, can we just shoot all the people that say the word free? That would be a vast improvement. Like nothing is free. There's no free anything. Everything has costs to it. Everything's a trade-off. Well, they got to pay for all this infrastructure. How do you do that? Oh, well, the way you pay for the infrastructure is you sell the advertising uh, to people, and you sell the data to other people. And it's a noble goal to tie the world together. Right? If you look real carefully, what you notice is the contract that you have to sell the data says they're not going to use the data in certain ways, but also they can share it with third parties. Well, you don't have a contract with that third party, and they'll use the data in a way that is not allowed by the contract you signed. And there's nothing wrong with that legally, apparently. Whether that's actually true or whether it should be true, that's a debate we could have. That's the issue. Northwest Line. I was just listening to an excellent discussion on YouTube about Catholic education, the decline on Dr. Larry Chapp's channel. Yeah, I mean, there's been a lot of decline. And the problem with the Catholics is they have a death wish of following the Protestants down the rabbit hole and seem to refuse to even confess that Vatican II, for whatever reason, was a bad idea. But like I can just tell them if they want to talk to me, I'll just explain to them how this works. It's not a secret. It's not hard to figure out on your own. It's pretty straightforward actually. But like they seem clueless about this. They seem absolutely, utterly clueless or unwilling to admit that Vatican II correlated with a destruction of the church and a recession of its power in some sense, at least clearly in Canada and the United States. Until they like have their mea culpa moment on that, it ain't gonna change. I'm sorry. But that problem's gonna get worse until it's at least called out by the appropriate authorities at the appropriate part of the hierarchy. I don't know what they're waiting for or what the problem is, but my goodness. Ixnon, specifically formation in virtue. Well, yeah. See, this is part of the problem. We're having an education conversation, and then what's happening is people are going, oh, education isn't having the effect we thought it would because we thought education would instill Western values or something, which don't even exist. There's no such thing. When people say Western values, they mean US values, American values. That's what they're talking about because the Brits don't have free speech, guys, and they never did, and they never will. First of all, they're unprincipled, so forget about that. It's already off the table. So that's the problem. That's the problem. Yon God, I hear FB was originally DARPA. No, it was not. Which was canceled in 2004. No, it absolutely was not. I actually know people that worked at DARPA in 2004 and before that. 0% true. Not even close. Zuckerberg wrote the code for that from scratch with no funding from anyone. Because it's not that hard to do, actually. The joke was that DARPA LifeLog was canceled unless canceled means shall be brought to the market. DARPA doesn't bring anything to the market. Oh, that's pretty cool. Yeah. DARPA doesn't bring anything to the market. Okay. DARPA only does classified things that never get released, and I can guarantee you, you don't know about any DARPA projects that matter. You might know about some alleged canceled DARPA projects through rumor, but I guarantee you don't know any DARPA projects. I guarantee you that I used to have classified capabilities, right? I actually do know a bunch of DARPA projects. They wouldn't scare you. DARPA doesn't know or care about the citizens of the United States at all. None of their projects have anything to do with your sorry ass. You're worthless to them. Absolutely not worth nothing, just worth less, right? DARPA, being part of the military, actually cares about very, very large things, and they don't do things involving persons. They might do things involving filtering out large population groups to isolate persons of interest for specific targeted operations, particularly on computers. But they don't do really much in the US at all. And when they do, it's at the behest of some military branch or military project, right? So that DARPA did a bunch of work for the JSTARS project, which I worked on, for example. So because I had a security clearance, I knew about that. Also, I knew a bunch of people that worked at like Draper Labs for DARPA. My father worked for BBNN, right, on the early internet and stuff like that. Like I actually know this stuff, and I'm telling you, DARPA is nothing you have to worry about at all ever. Least important conspiracy thing of all time. And DARPA is very much driven by two things: pure research and requests. Like if there's a request for something, like, oh, we need to be able to do something, that might go to DARPA, to Draper Labs or something like that, and they would do that. So that project is also an umbrella project that covers a lot of organizations. Like DARPA is not like a building somewhere, right? So yeah, conspiracy theorists like it because they don't know any of this stuff, and so it's mysterious, and so they can make it be whatever they want it to be. That's very appealing, and it's great for the 9 guys in a smoke-filled cigar room in the dark planning something, which, by the way, is the beginning of the movie Real Genius. And if you haven't seen Real Genius, you should watch Real Genius because it's hysterical. It's also the West Coast acting like the East Coast because it's actually about MIT, but that's okay. Yeah, may or may not be based on things that actually happened at MIT too. May not be entirely based on things that actually happened at MIT. Um, Exaggerations for sure. Also, funniest freaking film in the whole universe. I love Real Genius. I watch it every once in a while because it's just so funny. War Games is a similar thing. Uh, may or may not accurately reflect real events. A lot of stuff, a lot of movies just reflects real events. Ixnon, Mark's here telling us that video games lied. Yeah, all the video games lied. That's for sure. So there was an early video game, it was very groundbreaking, called Hackers. And I'll just tell you, oh, I could break into real computers, no problem. I could never crack that stupid game. I don't know why. There's something about the narrative construction of video games that generally escapes me entirely. Like I just, because it's artificial, I think, and I'm just very well grounded. So when I go to play narrative video games, I just suck at all of them. It's terrible. I remember spending 100 hours at least on Ultima 4, and I could never get it. I could never get it. And there's actually a game called what is it? Something of Krondor, which is based on a Raymond Feist book. I love Raymond Feist. Raymond Feist fantasy books. Absolutely read them all. Is it Road to Krondor? It's something like that. Anyway, it's based on his books, and it's supposed to be one of the greatest video games like ever of its kind in its genre. And I own it, but I could never, ever, ever, ever ever make any progress in it because this is a narrative game, and yeah. Yon God, I don't know. MGS2, what's MGS2? Predicted the future unless that was the president and we didn't believe it. Anybody can predict the future because history repeats or rhymes, depending on. So anybody can predict the future is not even hard. Northwest Line, that's why the only video games I play is Wordle. Wordle is a good game. I don't think that's necessarily healthy either, to be fair. I mean, I think like I fire up World of Tanks every once in a while. Of course, they didn't let me take my tanks from the Xbox 360 to the PlayStation 4, and the PlayStation 4 tanks are really, all those hours down the drain, which is sad. But I'm still not great at that. Although I was listening to Tool earlier today, which has been unusual for me actually, so I'm quite happy about that. Yeah, you put on anything from a particular album. And yeah, that's what I was doing when I was playing Quake. And so the Quake maps come back into my head. It's pretty funny. A little too much time spent on that game. Young God, spoiler alert. AI runs US federal government. Thanks, Plant Palantir. Yeah, that's funny. Metal Gear Solid and its sequels. Yeah. Oh, Metal Gear. Oh, yeah. Yeah. I've seen, what's his name? Max Durat on that. Max Durat actually came on my Discord server one day. I had a little chat with him. What an interesting fellow. I wish he'd come back. Poor kid. He needs a lot of help. Yeah, I learned everything I know about Metal Gear Solid from him, and it's not much, granted. Yeah, these patterns that recur at all levels, fractal, self-similar fractal layers of reality, not hard to predict, oddly, because they're there. Yeah, why don't you just go Young God, seriously, like you would love Elliott wave theory. Just go look that up. Have fun with that. That's not even wrong. It's just funny. MGS2 is just the Matrix? Maybe it's not. I don't that's an interesting observation. I'm pretty sure I watched a film older than the Matrix, which I had thought must have inspired it, but I forgot what it was. Was it The 13th Floor or Forbidden City? Those are both before the Matrix. And if Jesse were here, he could tell you more. Yeah, I'll just tell you how this works. Things in the world do not emanate from a single point, with some exceptions, but you don't know what they are. Don't worry about it. And you'll probably never figure it out. It's fine. It's fine. It's fine to be dumb about certain things. That's one of them. The idea of a wormhole in space with a space station next to it, managing the implications of that wormhole. Am I talking about DS9 or Babylon 5? Right. That idea was floating around. Now, the fact that J. Michael Straczynski actually coalesced that idea and then brought it to Paramount, who subsequently stole it to do Star Trek DS Deep Space Nine, does not mean it wasn't floating around before that and that other people didn't have a similar thing to pitch already, because they did. And that's part of the problem, is that a lot of ideas are in the ethos, and who gets there first is who gets there first. But they didn't usually originate it in any case, because it turns out the skill of being like a visionary person who comes up with an idea has very little overlap with being the type of person that can take an idea and make it happen. Very little overlap. It's very rare that people can do both. Very, very rare, actually, stunningly rare. Even getting an artist to do something as simple as this, which was, my God, not simple, but also it doesn't look that hard, does it? Just a testament to Sally Joe and the fact that she can get away with that. Because most artists can't. They can't make any of their art into anything. They can't manifest any of it, much less get it into form that people can buy it. And you can buy the Dog-Headed Book, by the way, on shop.markofwisdom.org. So you should do that, because if you don't, then are you even a real person? I don't know. I gotta post that video, Sally. I think I still have it. I've just never posted it. Maybe I'll post that on Sunday or something, just to in anticipation of someday being able to sell my book. And also, we get those boomerangs up in blue and green, which we'll get up on the store. That's going to be a limited run, most likely. We only have so many. And once they're gone, I probably be gone. So, yeah, look for that. It's going to be interesting. Being able to throw truth and have it come back at you is going to be cool. Maybe it'll teach you a little bit about the world. I mean, this is the Nick Fuentes problem, right? The guy's telling the truth about a lot of things, whether or not you think he's being hyperbolic or racist or whatever is really not um, all that important. Even if we'll say he's making a few mistakes, and since I haven't met anybody who is making zero mistakes, I think that's the lamest critique you could come up with. Uh, if you don't address the things he's right about, you're the problem, not him. Let me be abundantly clear. If you do not address the things that he's talking about that are truthful, accurate, and precise, you are the bad guy in all cases with zero exceptions. Don't do that. And do not ignore somebody who is giving you truth. That will backfire because truth is a boomerang. It's coming to get you. Ixnon, the dog-headed book is good. Can confirm. Yes. We've got a bunch. We just shipped a bunch to my lovely editor, Castle Adams, for promotional reasons. So we'll have promotional materials going out. And so hopefully you'll hear more about this channel and the websites and our project very soon. If you haven't visited thepetersonsphere.com, you should do that. We have a new article up there. We're going to put in a movie list and some other stuff as well, because we're sort of back on. We get sidetracked by a bunch of things, traveling to Ireland, getting sick on the way back, small things. And then things get off the rails a little bit because my project management skills have been lacking for sure. I used to be awesome at this stuff, and now I can barely wake up in the morning. Stupid illness. Of course, if I had a few $1,000,000, this wouldn't be a problem. If you'd like to give me a few $1,000,000, feel free. There's lots of ways to do that. All right, guys. 2 hours in, no one's jumping in. Anybody? If someone wants to jump in, I can keep the stream going. Otherwise, I can't because I'm tired. And I can't hold up an entire stream by myself for very long. I never could. I mean, I have a couple 8-hour streams, but old streams too, because they're on Jacob's channel as well. Back in the bad old days before Jacob betrayed us all and revealed that he actually wasn't going to do the project he said he was going to do, which is kind of too bad because I wish he would. But some people are not leaders. And by some, I mean almost nobody can lead anything ever, which is too bad, really, but it's the world we're in. If you want to know more about that, there are more details about that fact in this lovely book, which I promise you will soon be for sale. As soon as the people printing the book and drop shipping the book fix, do whatever magic they have to do to the storefront, which they have access to, it'll be up there. Sally Joe, on parenting time, I know, Sally, this is not your responsibility. Don't worry. I do appreciate it, though. Yon God, betrayed, quite the word. Yeah, well, betrayal is everywhere. Everybody gets betrayed. You facilitated it, Yon God. Yes, indeed. Indeed. So seriously, indeed. Yes. Interesting. Well, it's worth considering and taking seriously. I think, again, a lot of the problem is people have been trained to not take things seriously. And especially when you're not formed and you're still not mature, which is most people. Like, this is not pick on anyone in particular. And if you're not mature, you don't realize you're not mature. And especially if the people around you are even less mature, it's very hard to see where you're at. If you want to know how hard it is to see where you're at, look up the Midwit Meme PsyOp video that I have, which is a lovely animation. And I have another animation coming soon. I'm so excited. I have been waiting for like a year and a half to do that stupid video. I needed the animation. I confirmed with my lovely animator friend, who I had to pay to do this, by the way. So if you want to make up for all the money I had to spend, which granted was a bargain, Please feel free to donate. There's little donation links down there. Sign up for a YouTube membership, whatever you got to do. Yeah, I'm so happy that this is coming out. Um, yes, Ixnon, this is the doc animation. I had to do it in slides, and it's fine in slides. There's no problem with doing it in slides. Um, yeah, that would have been great. Young God, I think the difference is that Jacob doesn't think I'm lying, and generally you guys do. All right. The difference is I can tell when people are lying rather reliably and consistently. And what Jacob believes is not what you think, because I've actually talked to him about this, or rather, he's talked to me about this. So I'm sorry that you have a misimpression of what Jacob does and doesn't believe. But yeah, this is the maturity crisis right here. Lynn, I don't have anything to say, but always supportive. Yes, Lynn, you have been awesome. Absolutely love you to death still. And I don't think that's going to change because I don't think you're going to be unawesome anytime soon. We are big fans of Lynn. Things to consider. Yeah, it could be the world is a lot more complex than you think, and that people are being nicer to you than they should. Certainly. Sally Joe, if you weren't lying, there would be wedding pics. Well, there's always that, Sally. And you wouldn't have insisted that I was a liar about it. That's also true. Uh, there are certain logical ways to determine, the 100% certainty if someone's lying. Why the people who talk about logic all the time don't use them, I suspect they don't know them because they're not actually that good at logic, despite their insistence to the contrary. But also, yeah, none of this is hard. There's multiple ways to figure out when people are lying, and I'm surprised there isn't like a list out there to tell people because it's not that hard. I don't think it's that hard. Yon God. Sally Joe, I don't share my relationship on social media generally, but the fractal factual must have triggered me that day. Well, you weren't getting the attention that you wanted. Nope. And therefore you tried a trick to get more attention, and that trick backfired in ways you do not understand. But that's okay. We are still happy that you are still engaged because nobody saw that coming actually, except I suspected it might have a shot. So I'm happy about it. Um, even on days when you're far more frustrating than you're getting far more of my patience than you deserve. But that's okay. I made my decisions. I get to suffer for them. And don't mess with Sally though, because despite the fact that everybody on this planet will tell you that Manuel and Mark are mean, Sally is far meaner, far meaner than you can imagine. Certainly far meaner than I am. Certainly far meaner than I am. See, this is what you guys do. I am here to be called a mother. Well, that's good. Uh, Sally, I'm not Mark. Yeah, well, that is the problem. He could go outside permanently. Yes. Yes. Yeah. Look, happy to have people engaged who are difficult. That is our specialty after all, but also you got to make progress. And I'm not saying you're not. Everything's fine, but also, yeah, don't be thinking the world is what you think it is. That is the point of this channel, is to show you the world isn't what you think it is. Here's a better way to think about the world that is much less intellectually taxing. And I know it's a lot of videos because we've been at it like 4.5 years or whatever. But it's worth it. It's worth it. I wouldn't have put in the work if it didn't have any effect. And I know for a fact from guys like Ixon, for example, in Castle, that it does have an effect. It has a whopping effect. And Jesse, where is Jesse? I miss Jesse so much. It has a whopping effect on the people that it works on. It's not going to work on everybody. And I totally understand that. And as with anything, you've got to meet the material halfway. And some people aren't going to do that. And some people aren't able to do that. And I understand that. But you know what? If nothing else comes from this, I'm okay with where we've gotten so far. Like, I'm massively okay with that. Massively. You have no idea. Like, I'm just thrilled. I can't even believe it, actually. the other day I was talking to somebody on the Discord server, and he's only shown up once since, but he actually watched because we were having a discussion, and I said, "Yeah, I'm not a fan of Alex O'Connor." I actually have a video about that. He actually watched it and came back to me later and said, "You made a really good point there, and that convinced me." And I was like, "That stuff never worked. That never works, like ever." I was amazed. I was so happy. I was happy for like a week after that. I'm still happy about it when I think about it. It's so wonderful that that ever works on anyone. And I do it because it can work, and hopefully I'm getting better at it. But like if you don't engage, it's a big problem. Northwest line. Alex O is a big dork. Yeah. Well, look, I mean, I don't even dislike him. It's just it's sad to watch him and listen to him. And these other people too. Like, oh my god, the Vsauce guy and I forget the other guy. Ginger Bill has had me watch these guys. I couldn't. I watched them for a bit. I was like, this framing is terrible. Some of the Peterson framing, like We Who Wrestle with God, I can't read that book. It is insane. It is insane. The framing is all wrong, and I just can't. I can't deal with it. I'm like, I can't track this. This is dumb. Northwest line. I don't understand why anybody likes Alex. Yeah, well, look, he's got it. All Brits automatically free pass. Watch Family Guy. Did you notice the baby speaks with a UK accent? And that makes him seem smart. I had a friend who didn't notice that. And when I pointed it out to him, he went, "Oh, yeah, you're right. Wow. Yeah. Just speaking with a British accent makes you sound smarter to others. How amazing." That is true. It's strange. So he's got that tonal enchantment going for him. Maybe that's not tonal enchantment. Well, he has some tonal enchantment. What would that be? See, this is what happens when you're not able to focus and you can't just write down all the types of enchantment. There's a bunch of them, but that level of enchantment combined with the credentials and the fact that he seems to, but is not in the system, but bucking the system is a very powerful signal. And the rebels like that. Oh, he's academic, but he's fighting academia. Whether that's true or not is irrelevant. That's the impression that he gives. And then he's very good at narrative enchantment, using logic, reason, and rationality. Now, I'd destroy him in 5 seconds on pretty much any point with logic because he ain't that good. He's really not that good. But he's way better than most people. And actually, the world in some spots appears linear, but it's not. And so when it's not linear, that tipping point is what Malcolm Gladwell calls it. I don't particularly like him, but he's usually not entirely wrong when he's saying stuff. Sometimes he's entirely wrong. And then what happens is you can just know 3 or 4 logic tricks and seem way better than everybody else at logic. That's true. And Alex is one of those guys. No, he's not good at all when it comes to logic. Yeah. Well, and in the postmodern world where there's framing issues with everything, and that's caused by the individualism and the objectivism, like there's no objective world. What are you talking about? Like crazy talk, right? It's easy to fall into that trap. And the animation that I'm going to release in the next week and a half, maybe sooner, we'll see how I feel. Like if I can get some recording done tomorrow or maybe even Tuesday, I might double release next week unrecorded videos, assuming it's edited and we're right on schedule for editing, which means it won't be ready for a week and a half, but we'll see. Maybe we'll get to speed it up. That's out of my control. I'm not the editor. I first heard of Alex O'Connor was Peter Hitchens talking about walking off his show. Yeah. Yeah, that was a mess. That was a mess. So I think that if you're not good at logic and you see somebody that you think is better than you, that you look up to, you're going to be enchanted. That's true for most things, right? Yeah. It's true for most things. Sally Joe, you affect people and it's on you. Well, that's true, Sally. We live in a world and it's a problem. Can't do anything without affecting a bunch of other people and a bunch of other things. And what's affecting me right now is tiredness. So I am glad everybody is here. My number's been all over the place lately, and I don't know why. Although the channel's doing great. I got more subs than ever. The live streams have not been doing well from a historical perspective. I haven't figured out why. And it's hard to track these numbers because StreamYard lies. And this goes out on 3 things. And to be fair, I used to go out on 5 channels. And now I can only do 3, which is no one's fault except that StreamYard is evil. And again, if I win the lottery, I can fix all this, but I haven't yet won the lot. I should buy a ticket. That might help. But look, I'm glad everyone's here. I hope everyone's getting stuff out of the channel. There's more stuff coming. It's all going to be great. And I hope you'll buy boomerangs. They'll get listed soon. They're in 2 colors. How can you resist a green or a blue boomerang? I mean, maybe you can resist a green one. Can you resist a blue one? Maybe you can resist a blue one, but can you resist a green one? I don't think so. I don't think that's how it works. I don't think that's how anything works. I'm hoping that by Tuesday, the book pre-orders will be in place. And of course, these are always available. You can just buy a dog-headed book whenever you want. I've had them up there forever. Buy 1 million of them. No, I don't have 1 million. Buy as many as you can. They're wonderful. Give them to your friends. It's actually really important. Like, you want to engage with symbolism? That's the book for you. Sally Joe's masterpiece, in my opinion. Probably her greatest work. Maybe we'll get her to do more zines when she clears her books of all the other work she has to do that's way more important. Have a great week, everybody. I will see you next week. I don't know what the topic will be. If you have a topic, let me know. The movie club thing with patterns, that's coming. I'm going to do an announcement on the channel because I have the community page open about that. So I'm going to use the YouTube community page to talk about that. And of course, the Discord server, because we have both. So if you're on the Discord server, that's great, right? That's the easiest thing for everybody. But I'll also try to remember to post to the YouTube community channel. So if you're interested in doing these, they won't be symbolic interpretations of movies, but they will be kind of similar to that. That's probably the closest analog to what we'll be doing. We'll be looking for patterns in movies. There will be homework. You will have to watch Good Will Hunting on your own without me. I'm not going to show clips from the movie. We're just going to talk about our findings based on the worksheet that I have written up. That worksheet is probably 90% complete, and it's going to be a lot of fun. So if you're interested in that, look for that. If you have suggestions on the times and stuff, put them either on my Discord server if you're there, like Ixanon is, or on a comment on one of my videos, because I see all the comments, or in the community section of the YouTube channel, and you can participate as well. The movie that we will be doing in December, as soon as I figure out a good date for this, will be Good Will Hunting. Probably don't want to watch it until you get the worksheet, which will be completed probably by Monday at the very latest, because all the work I think is done, or all the work I want to do on it is done, and I'm just waiting for editing and make sure I didn't miss anything, because one should not do these things on one's own. And that's why we need you. And that's why the world needs you, right? And because the world needs you, take care of yourself and take care of the people around you. Make things better. Be better. The world needs you to be better. And if you're better, the world will be better. Right? Ixnon, if this goes well, maybe next year we can do Die Hard. I'd have to think about that. Maybe. We'll see. Let's see how this one goes. Oh yeah, thank you, Ixnon, for all the wonderful work on the game, which is coming along swimmingly, by the way, and which I have to do more work on myself because I have not. I just get sidetracked with stuff. and then my illness hits and it's all over. I can't remember what day it is anymore. So hopefully, I have been feeling better. So hopefully I can get my act together this weekend and do more. I will see you all next week, I hope. Have a lovely week. I don't know what we'll be talking about. If you have suggestions, put them on the community page on YouTube, put them in comments, put them on my Discord server, Mark of Wisdom, wherever, and be better. Be better.